All right, welcome to Talkin Investing. You're here with Tom and George. Hello, George.
Hello.
Well, listen, at least it's a good Friday. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the stream. If you have not yet, please smash the like button. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff today. Of course, this channel focuses on Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners, but we had CPI, PPI. We've got the Fed next week. We've got global geopolitical stuff going on, and we had a lot of red early in the week, and we had a straight green day today in the Bitcoin miners today. So we're going to go through all of that, take a look at everything, and we'll let you know what we're thinking, and we'll see what you guys think. And in that vein, George, what's the first poll?
I don't even know.
I got an easy one because
you got an easy one. Okay.
This is the real question.
I mean, I'll just tell you today's the full moon. So, and when did Bitcoin turn around? Anyone? Bueller? Anyone?
This is just a super. Let's start easy. Did Bitcoin hit bottom? Did we bottom out? So I'm gonna go to the 1 day while we're looking at that question. If you see, and there's a reason I ask this, of course, it's the obvious question. We got down to $76,555. So from the top, we
did get down that low?
Yeah, from the top in January down to the bottom earlier this week, just a few days ago, that is 30%. That was almost a perfect 30% correction. So are we done? Is that it? I'm going to give you guys my thoughts throughout. I'm going to let you guys answer first. Last year in 2024, we had 5 pullbacks. 4 were 20 to 23%, and 1 was a little over 30%. So in 2025, we're in the middle, of our first pullback, or maybe at the end, and this is a 30% pullback. So we get these. We got one, 2024 Bitcoin was up over 120%. That was a very, very bullish year. Yet we had 5 major pullbacks, one of which was over 30%. So this is how cryptocurrency behaves. The Bitcoin miners are even more dramatic than that. So we talk about volatility relentlessly because it's the number one most important thing everybody has to understand in this space. It is volatile. It is crazy volatile. To put it in perspective, if the Dow or the S&P 500 pulled back 30%, 20%'s a bear market, 30%'s a full-blown recession crash, end of the world in the S&P 500 or the Dow. And Bitcoin, that's par for the course. So is that the bottom? We have some good signals. Go ahead, George.
I thought today would be a lot of pain with the whole eclipse last night.
Oh, the lunar eclipse?
Which I thought, then the United States, I thought they would go ahead and do the old, we can't get this budget approved or whatever, the debt ceiling limit, I think is what it was. I thought there was an opportunity to really bring some havoc that did not come to Bitcoin or the market. So I was in shock, honestly.
Well, that's going to be the question because the market rallied today. As all the articles came out today that the S&P 500 is in correction territory, which is technically defined as a 10% pullback or more. We had a big green day, and let me go take a look at that real quick.
We're off to the races?
Well, same thing, but so from the top, which was on February 19th, almost 1 month ago, we're now down 8.26%. Now, everybody's writing articles today because yesterday we closed. We got down 10.3%. We closed down 10%. That's a correction. That's when they start talking correction. And so, but no sooner do they say that than we have a huge green day. So the same question can be asked of the overall market as we're asking of Bitcoin. Was that the bottom? We got a correction. Now, the Qs, which is the NASDAQ, that's a little more volatile. So from top to bottom, that was almost 14%. We had a nice green day here. It's now 11%. So still in correction territory for the Qs. But again, these tend to be more volatile. It hit higher highs. It was up more, so it pulled back more. Right now, we have pretty much 2/3, 1/3. Did Bitcoin bottom? 2/3 say yes, 1/3 says no. What say you, George?
Okay, let me just start off by saying this. This assumes that we don't have war. This assumes that we don't, Ukraine and Russia says, they like each other again and they hold hands and we sing Kumbaya. If that, I still worry that if we hit World War III or something to that effect, that things could go a lot lower. That's the only thing. If that doesn't happen, though, I think we're out of the woods.
So you think so obviously, with a black swan type of event, any gigantic geopolitical event would upset the apple cart here, but all other things being equal, you think that was the pain?
Yeah. I think this, knowing where we were, I thought they were going to be able to get it down 30%, but unfortunately we did not. I actually was rooting for it personally. It's already, they brought so much pain already. Let's put it this way. If this wasn't the bottom, we are bouncing on the bottom.
So are we going, there's one of three scenarios. That was the bottom. We're going through a bottoming out process, or we're heading lower. And I have two different charts that tell me two different things. I think, so I will tell you, we're still hanging out at around 2/3, 1/3. I think we're in a little bit of a relief rally. But we have been bearish for a few months, and I'm not sure we're out of the woods. And I'm just going to look at a couple of charts that I look at, and then I found an article that was kind of talking about one of them, but not really talking about the other one.
Have you looked at the Fear and Greed Index? Fear.
Let's take a look at the Fear and Greed Index. If I update that, we're in fear, so we were in extreme fear on our Tuesday live stream for members only. We're now in fear, but at 27, that's pretty low. If anybody could, we are at 13 likes. This is the lowest in the history of the stream. So if you could do us a favor, we shoot for 100 likes. We've gotten it. You guys have done that for us every time. It's much appreciated. So smash the like button. Let's get some people showing up here on the stream. I don't know. Is something going on in the world? Because it feels like, or has everybody just given up on Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners?
I agree with all of you, by the way, about miners, Bitcoin miners, is because it just seems like all they do is go freaking down. When Bitcoin turns around, it just seems like it just kind of hangs out and doesn't really have any relief.
Well, and we're going to look at those charts. We can do that. Let's wait a few minutes for people to show up, but let's look at the charts, and we're going to see what the Bitcoin miners did this week, what they've done this month, and what they've done this year, and what they've done this entire cycle, because they're not anywhere near where I expected them to be. We've been talking about that. Everybody's got to be disappointed. There's still a few Bitcoin miners that are down 90%. Still today, right now, down 90 or more percent from their highs of the last cycle. That's very hard for me to believe. I'll call one out that, I don't know what to make of. Hive blockchain is down 94% from its highs of the previous bull market. 94%. Now, I don't think it's behaving that way operationally as a company. But obviously, the stock market has absolutely decimated. That may be the worst one. There are others over 90. There's a lot that are still down 60 or 70 or 80%. Now, some of these are down 85% and they're up 300% from the bottom. So, if you dollar cost averaged in, it all depends on who, what, how, where, when you bought, as to whether you're up or down on these stocks. But if you just bought at the top and held the last 4 years, you're still getting wrecked. I mean, Hive is almost back to its low. It crashed in the November, December FTX situation. It had a big crash below its low, and we're only 27% above that number right now. We are below. Hive stock is below where it was for almost. So if you were dollar cost averaging in during the crypto winter, you're still down from those purchases with Hive. So, there's companies out there like that where you scratch your head and go, is it done for Hive? I mean, they've replaced their whole fleet. They have big growth plans. They do have a nice hodl on their balance sheet, but the market's obviously given up on Hive at this. That doesn't mean that they'll give up forever, but at this point, I mean, are these the best buying opportunities of all time, or are these just all left for dead? There's no doubt people have to be asking themselves these types of questions. I will tell you, I still have a high level of confidence in the top Bitcoin miners. So, we used to follow 19, then we went down to 12. Now there's a couple we had to drop because they're not going to report their information anymore. So unfortunately, we can't track them if they don't tell us what they're doing. And it's TerraWolf and Bit Digital that made the decision to stop putting out monthly operations. I'm going to show you an article or a press release that Bit Digital, I think, put out today or yesterday that I think clearly explains why they're not putting out any more monthly operational reports. And it doesn't mean it's a bad stock or a bad company. They have shifted gears, so we'll take a look at that stock ticker BTBT. And they're all down considerably. Pessimistic Frank said, but all MicroStrategy, which is now strategy, stock ticker MSTR. Yeah. In the same time that the Bitcoin miners did that, stock ticker MSTR has exploded. It's up huge. In 2024, it was the big winner by a mile versus the Bitcoin miners. 2025, not so much. They're all struggling. Aaron is saying the Bitcoin miners don't seem to be leverage play when Bitcoin goes up, but they sure are when Bitcoin goes down. So we've had too many of those days where it is that way. I can point out some days that are an exception to that, but that, as a rule, Karen, that's what's been happening to us for the last year. We just haven't got that explosive movements. We've had a few days. We've had a few days where Bitcoin was sideways or up a little, and the Bitcoin miners were up. Some of them were up 20 or 30%. But the problem is we've had too many days where Bitcoin was up 1% and the Bitcoin miners were down 5% or 8% or 10%. We had one day last week where one of the Bitcoin miners was down 30% in one day. I mean, so things haven't evened out at all to this point. I have not bought this dip at all. So I'm holding everything I have. I haven't bought this dip. And that is the answer to my question. Do you think that we've hit the bottom? So this is really close. 58% think we have hit the bottom. 42% think we have not hit the bottom. So I think we have one more push down. And I think I'll go to an article and then I'll show you. I basically had this pointed out.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, they might as well wait 2 more weeks and have a bad first quarter. You know what I mean?
Right. Where we end up on March 31st is where all the Bitcoin miners are going to have to mark their Bitcoin down to. So whereas, the December numbers were fantastic, if we stay, if they got to mark things down, we're going to have a little bit of the opposite. So this article came out 2 days ago. Bitcoin forms a bullish RSI divergence just in time for US CPI. The CPI data came in. We'll take a look. It was a beat, so that was good for the market, although the market didn't rage or anything like that. We had a quick little pump and then kind of went sideways. And I'll just show you, because I've been following a different divergence. But if you look on the one day chart, you can see we've had a lower high in Bitcoin, but a lower low in Bitcoin and a higher low in the daily RSI. So we just really confirmed a bullish divergence on the 1 day time frame. So I do think we could have a relief rally. I think we could have a couple of weeks where this plays out. There's no guarantee of that. All of these technicals are not a guarantee. I mean, ordinarily you would hope to see a nice, move up, but it does not necessarily signal a bottom. And, so that's the 1 to 2 week. But I'm going to just show one more that I've been looking at for a long time that I don't think is done playing out. And we've been talking about this on the channel for quite some time. This is a bearish divergence on the Bitcoin 1 week chart. So the 1 day chart has created a bullish divergence. But here we're getting higher highs and on Bitcoin on the 1 week time frame and lower highs on the 1 week RSI. So this is a much bigger time frame. This usually takes longer to play out. And I had talked about the fact, look at when we get now. So if you look at the MACD, we had a bearish crossover. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're in our 6th week of a bearish crossover, and you can see that on the. But I mean, these can last. These can last 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. They vary. Sometimes these are quick. Sometimes they're long. I think they tend to average about 90 days, and somewhere 60 days into this, you can start to get a turnaround. You don't have to have a bullish crossover to have bullish price action. And, we talked about this. Let me find the same. If you look right here, this is the last red candle. That's this. So we got all this positive price action. That was all these candles. So we were still in the bearish crossover for another 5 weeks after this, but we started to move up. You can see we were inching and inching and inching towards a bullish crossover, which we got. And then we went from a little run up to a big run up. So this is still playing out. We're early in this, but in the middle of this, you can see just like here, in the middle of this, we had some relief. We had a big up move. I feel like this is what's happening right now. I think we're about to get one of these. And so I think, the next 1 or 2 weeks may be good, but I do still think we're going to get hit one more time before we get our final turnaround on this pattern. Now, obviously, the technicals are only one thing, but they've been playing out a lot more closely than at other times in the past. Certain technicals, and these divergences have really been insightful as far as I'm concerned over the last several months. But there's other things, if you're following, I'll tell you one that's broken. It was like people for a long time, there were people, this is all they watched. This is the strength of the dollar. If that went down, and you can see this has gotten wrecked. If that went down, Bitcoin was going up. That was a great correlation for like a couple of years. It wasn't flawless, but it was a fantastic correlation. But unfortunately, here, the dollar has gotten, beaten up big time from a multi-year high. This green line, as of 2022, was a 20-year high, and we got much, much higher than that. But we've pulled way back, but in that same time, Bitcoin's pulled back from its high. So unfortunately, this went from an inverse relationship to, pretty much a straight relationship. So it flip-flopped on us. So that's why just looking at one technical data point is always super dangerous, because they're none of them are 100%. And obviously, if one of them was 100%, then everybody would trade on it and we'd all be super rich. So it makes sense that you've got to look, the more things that you look at, and still all you can do is make an educated guess. And that's why I dollar cost average in and tend to hold on to things, because I just, in the end, who knows? I've been saying for some time, I'm out of the short-term guessing game.
Well, nothing's changed really about the fundamentals of Bitcoin, has it?
Yeah, I think that's so if you're a buy and hold person, I think that's the real question. Has anything changed from a fundamental standpoint? And if your answer is yes, it's probably that things are getting better. Right? Pretty much every stream we introduce some new things that are in Bitcoin's favor. Things keep getting better and better for Bitcoin and for cryptocurrency. Adoption is growing. We'll talk about the ETFs because they're moving the Bitcoin market, and they have not been moving in the right direction. After the most historic run, they had a big stretch of massive inflows, and now the opposite has happened. So we'll look at that chart. And that's one of the reasons we've gotten a pullback. I mean, you can see this was January 20th, so not quite 2 months ago. But, this was a double top. This was December 17th. So now we're talking 3 months ago. And we've been trading inside this range since this daily candle really raced us up to a new range. We entered that on November 11th. So, we're almost 5 months into this overall pattern. And you can see I've got a line of support down here at 74,000. We didn't get to that. We got to 76,500. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to get to this. Who knows? This could very well be the bottom. But we do seem to be hitting, lower lows. So it's going to be confusing. And 3 days ago, everybody's sentiment was horrific. And now, we get to look at a board that's all green. And I will tell you, the holdout, Cypher, was red for more than 95% of the day today. And it just got up to green just before the market closed. It's up 1 penny, and it was down. When I say 95% of the day, it might have been 99% of the day. But that went green, which means we got a straight across the board. Everything green. The biggest winner today, MicroStrategy up 13% today. But we had Marathon up over 8%, right? They're the largest by market cap. TerraWolf up 9%. Riot just under 7%. Iron just under 7%. So we had a lot of HUT, 7.77%. A lot of nice moves today. And Bitcoin itself, so this is IBIT, the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF. It was up 5.76%. So you can see, if I go to the 15-minute time frame, from yesterday, this is where Bitcoin was when the U.S. equity markets closed yesterday. So you can see we rallied all night and all day. And then, when the markets opened, we had a little pullback and then a huge rally. And then we kind of just went sideways. So a nice, really nice day for Bitcoin, a nice day for the Bitcoin miners. But it was not, that still leaves it at not a nice week, which we'll look at next. If you guys could do us a huge favor, let's see, did my button break? Oh, there we go. If you could hit the like button if you just got here, or if you've been here and you haven't hit the like button yet, it does help the stream out in real time a lot. We want to get this stream out to people. We want to get awareness on the Bitcoin miners, on what's going on with Bitcoin, because I think we got a couple of groups of people, some that have long since checked out, some that are right on the tipping point right now of just this has been a long, hard run, and for these stocks to be down this far, I'm going to show you from where they are down from their highs and up from their lows, and it's been a roller coaster ride. The volatility is wicked, and a lot of people have bailed and given up. Sourmelon Gaming said, America loves to panic. Refer back to the toilet paper crisis in 2020. I don't know what that was inside of the argument, but that is true. I don't know if that's, I assume that's probably true of the whole world, and it's a lot of legacy media is what I'll call it. The mainstream media. That's their whole ratings formula is panic. So fear, uncertainty, and doubt is their business model. So we see a lot of that every day. Carson saying CleanSpark already did a 10x this bull cycle. So yes, it's way off of its highs, even inside of this cycle. That's what's most frustrating is when Bitcoin was lower than this, most of these companies were much higher than this a year ago. So the Bitcoin miners right now are really, really oversold. I'm going to go to a couple of things. So this is CleanSpark's short interest at February 28th, 2025. 29% short interest. There's not too many companies that are higher than that in the stock market. And I would say if you narrow that to the S&P 500, I don't know that there's any companies. Is Kohl's in the S&P 500? There's like 2 companies that are shorted more than this that are legit sized companies. There's many companies shorted 60, 70, 80%, but they're tiny, tiny nano cap stocks. So, if you have 1 million shares outstanding, then, it's easy to short those to that extent. But of legitimate companies, CleanSpark, Marathon, Riot, and TeraWolf are 4 of the most shorted stocks in the entire stock market. And CleanSpark in the lead at 29.15% as of the end of February. So we'll see where they are. We're 1 day away. March 15th, we'll get new short numbers. My guess is it's gotten even worse. It keeps getting a little worse every month. So, we'll see. Starmel Gaming is saying, Tom, the market is not set up for the miners to do anything. Interest rates, economic news, and general panic and impatience will continue to spank the miners silly. So some of that I agree with. We're in the short term. But here's the problem with that, and you just don't know what the day is, because I know Sour Melon Gaming is a longtime member and contributes a lot of insightful thoughts. I know it's incredibly frustrating, and I think I read one of your posts earlier that you've been kind of trading in and out and at least doing something with the miners versus just watching and waiting forever, which can be it exhausts people. They're exhausting the retail investors. They've pushed most of them out. I think they're almost done. So I'm expecting what we talked about, maybe a little pump right now, because we did just have a bullish divergence on the 1 day time frame. For whatever that's worth, that may play out and give us a little pump. It did today. We got a nice big move up in Bitcoin today. And we may pull up into that 91, 92,000 territory, meet some resistance there, and then retest the lows one more time. That's okay. But it is exhausting.
It's amazing. I'm looking at the market caps of companies, and it's amazing to see the values of these companies. It is just unfathomable to see this. This is just unbelievable to me.
Which ones?
Well, for an example, Visa and MasterCard.
Oh,
to me,
those are 2 of the 10 biggest companies in the world.
No, top 20 now.
Top 20.
But, yeah, top 20. And because if you add those 2 together, that's $1 trillion of goes away once crypto is mainstream. How do those companies make it?
Yeah, that's a very fair question. If cryptocurrency, and we've got a lot of signals, some of which we'll talk about. We got legislation coming through. We've got stablecoin legislation that's working its way through the system. It made crossed a big hurdle today or yesterday. And, if we're going to start transacting, at a fraction, 1/10, 1/100th of what MasterCard and Visa charge, then, are they, what is their 10-year and 20-year outlook as a business? They're like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, George, they're like $400 or $500 billion market caps.
Visa is 640.
Unbelievable.
MasterCard is 481 as of close today.
Yeah, I mean, that's a $500 million market cap each. And if you look at their 10 or 20-year business plan, is it going to be undone? Because, I mean, what are you going to do if you can't compete? They charge quite a bit of money to do a transaction.
But let's think about this for a second. XRP, Solana, I say Ethereum, Chainlink, all of them can replace both of those companies.
Right. I can see a world where they, even if it's not 100%, they're going to do nothing but take market share away from those two companies.
Well,
how much and how fast, who knows?
This is why I like XRP. XRP is 136. Wow. It's $136 billion is their market cap now. That's amazing. And, I got to think Visa, MasterCard, and all these other guys are doing everything they can to suppress the snot out of crypto right now. Because crypto is considered retail, except Bitcoin. Everything else is considered retail. Does that make sense? The everyday average Joe.
Yeah, the vast
is in right. And I think that was the reason why, I'm so tired of still fighting. I think that's the reason why, we're still fighting. It's funny because I put up is Bitcoin pricing being controlled, and it's basically 80-20,
Oh, is that up right now? Is Bitcoin pricing being controlled? So 80% say yes. And did Bitcoin hit the bottom? That ended up 60-40. So very split on that. Oh, it's almost a draw.
Yeah, I just think that, there's a company now, I won't say their name, that is in control of Bitcoin, and they're very good at manipulating and getting FUD out there so that you get out of the market.
All right, we're at 52 likes. For those who are willing and for those who are able, if you could hit the like button, we're going for 100 likes. Let's get people. It does help the stream in real time. I feel like they're suppressing us, George, again. They were doing that.
Yeah.
I think they might be doing it again.
Well, here's what's going on. Tom, we've been spot on with our prediction of the price of Bitcoin. I wouldn't say so much for the price of stocks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But price of Bitcoin, But look at this. Bank of America, 310.
$310 billion.
Yeah, and then I saw J.P. Morgan way up here at 650 billion. I mean, those companies directly get destroyed by crypto.
Those are all financial. And so you look, I mean, at the top of the tech is the king. So most of the top 6 or 7 or 8 are tech companies, but then you've got, big financial institutions, and that includes MasterCard and Visa, and you've got big pharma. I mean, I think tech, big pharma, and financial institutions dominate the top 20. It's probably 15 of the top 20.
Right.
Or more.
And my whole thing is this. I feel that the next, 7 to 10 years in the United States, hopefully the rest of the world too, is going to be where small businesses really start to thrive again. And these large companies, they start to lose some market cap. That's what I see happening.
Well, I mean, Apple was on a run towards $4 trillion. It's pulled way back, but I mean, it's crazy time. And
yeah, but think about it. Looking at these companies, Apple, NVIDIA, Microsoft, and Amazon, I don't know if I put them this way. You know what I mean? And then Google after them.
They're now down to a $3.2 trillion company.
Yeah.
But they've got a 34 PE ratio. To me, Apple is not a startup, tech company that's going to be monumental high growth. If you look, let's look at their here. So their projections are 4.5% growth this year and 8% growth next year. So does that warrant a 34 PE? I mean, you could hit this stock could get hit by 40% and the PE would still be reasonable. Here's one that's always had a mystifying, and I understand, a part of me understands, because it feels like Amazon's taking over the world. Everywhere you go, everywhere you look, they're doing everything, and I understand they're a monster. But with that said, they're at almost a 36 PE ratio. This is a $2 trillion company. These are very, very high PE ratios from a historical standpoint. And these aren't little companies. These are multi-trillion-dollar companies at these huge valuations. So, we could have a pullback where, the top 10 or 15 stocks have a big correction and the rest of the market doesn't necessarily get destroyed. Because the reason we're at all-time highs is, they call it the Magnificent Seven, and there's a few more that you can pile in on that. There's 15 or 20 stocks that dictate the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ. The Dow is a different animal. That's 30 stocks, and it's a lot more balanced. But the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ are dominated by these companies.
It's really, Wells Fargo is really down there. They're only 7.85 billion, sorry.
How much?
7.85 billion.
Wells Fargo?
Yeah. Oh, no, that was their gain. That was their gain in the last 30 days.
I was going to say, there's no way. They're got to be a couple $100 billion.
32 billion.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
But what was crazy, Tom, is they say the total market cap of all the companies combined is $111 trillion.
Yeah, so that means just one company, Apple, is almost 3%.
Wow, that's
of everything. And Microsoft is right there with it, and NVIDIA is right there with it. Now, I know they've pulled back off of their highs, This was up $242 for Amazon. So in any event,
I had no idea that the company's ServiceNow was so big.
I don't even know that company.
Oh, they're big in the industry, like HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and all that.
Got you. I will say, I see some people still complaining about CEO salaries. And I don't know what to tell you. I feel like this is what it is. I don't think the CEO's salaries are disproportionate. Yes, and Harrison, you make some good points. I've seen a couple of your notes that are, I understand. There was one particular time where the Cleanspark people sold at the top. But the thing is, they still have a monumental interest. Everybody acts like they've all sold all their shares. They're still some of the biggest shareholders. So their fate is tied to the price of this stock. Yes, did they sell? And remember, a lot of these people need to sell shares of stock to pay taxes and do other kinds of things. And a lot of these sales are planned way in advance. So at least
before lunch.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Sometimes as early as breakfast. No, in all seriousness, you want a company that's, I mean, here's the other side. CleanSpark has 20x'd the size of their company in the last 3 years. So doesn't management deserve some compensation for how many companies have grown their company, the size of their company 20x in a 3-year window? So yes, they hit every incentive that they're going to hit. Most of the, these top Bitcoin miners. Let's put it this way: in January of 2021, CleanSpark was at 1 exahash. Now they're at 40 exahash. That's a 40x in growth. And they just announced a few weeks ago they're now 100% vertically integrated. They have no hosted machines anywhere else. So a lot of these companies have set up a lot of infrastructure, and I know people are sick of hearing it, but they've changed their business model. Marathon went from asset light. They weren't buying, they had 100% of their machines hosted by others. Now they're looking to ultimately host 100% of their own machines. So, this industry has gone through a big change. This last Bitcoin cycle and this Bitcoin cycle, the Bitcoin miners had to learn how to get profitable because all of a sudden, this is now a real asset class. Everybody's paying attention. But I will tell you, everybody thinks it's plug and play. There's a big learning curve, and all of these companies felt the pain when they were learning how to do this. And I think it's in a sweet spot because you're not going to see, unlike AI, a lot of the AI companies that are out there, I worry for, and even the Bitcoin mining companies that are making a lot of data centers for AI, I worry because look at Microsoft and Apple and a lot of the other giant companies that are allocating $80 or $100 billion of their own money to make their own data centers. So I don't know that servicing that is going to be the way to go because AI is a gigantic market. Bitcoin mining doesn't hold the same upside. So somebody like Apple's never going to get involved in Bitcoin mining. It's too small. It's not, it can't be on their radar. It's not worth it. So there's less incentive to get in. There's a big learning curve, despite what people think. I'll just buy a machine and plug it in. You've got to have the energy infrastructure. You have to have long-term good energy deals. You have to be good at maintaining these machines. So I think you guys have seen all these companies have their period of time. Marathon was the first one to struggle. Then Riot struggled for like a year, and Bitfarms has had times where they've struggled to reach their growth goals. So that would be my question, because I've seen a lot of people say, and somebody in here said that, this is just a dead industry. Bitcoin miners cannot make money. So I'm gonna put a poll up on that one. We're at 66 likes. If you would be so kind, we're shooting for 100. We've never failed. So don't let today be the first day. Help us out if you would. If you're watching now, and if you're watching later on a rewatch, you can still hit the like button anyway. It does help the channel. Of course, also, you can subscribe to the channel. We talk about Bitcoin and Bitcoin miners all the time. Let me put this poll up, because we've been following the Bitcoin miners for years now, and I understand they're not in a good place. I'm going to put this poll up, and then we'll look at the performance of what the Bitcoin miners have done, because I think it's important to look at that and acknowledge where we are at right now. I'm going to ask you this way. Is Bitcoin mining a failed business model? Or are these companies just never going to make money, in your opinion? And, with the halvings coming up, there's just more and more pressure on them, and it's just going to get worse and worse. And we've seen the best days are behind us. and there will be no pump in this cycle because, you know, right now we're quite deep into the bull run. We're in the middle of a 30% pullback.
Do you think because Trump said what he said about Bitcoin miners and crypto and being the crypto capital basically, and do you think that could be affecting these Bitcoin mining companies? You know how he said that, you know, we need to be the leader of innovation?
Are you saying just because there's a gigantic group of people that just do the opposite of whatever he says?
Yes.
So I'm sure that's a factor. The market has taken a big hit, right? We just looked at, we're in correction territory. There's no reason for the market to be in correction territory versus a month ago or 3 months ago or 6 months ago. The numbers that are coming out have been good. There's a gigantic, this tariff scare. I know it feels like chaos. There's things out there that feel like chaos and uncertainty, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. The uncertainty factor, especially as you know, the tariffs are on, the tariffs are off, the tariffs are doubled, the tariffs are off. So you can get whiplash from it. But this is all going somewhere. And what we talked about with the members only is if you're a new somebody in the members only said, you know, if this was the new CEO of your company, you'd fire him. But actually, my counterpoint to that is, and if you look at any publicly traded company, you will see this happen. The first thing a new CEO does when they come in on a publicly traded company, they get one freebie. The next quarterly report isn't theirs. They don't own it. It's the previous administration, if you will. So any possible thing they can write off, write down, They want the next financial statements to be the worst thing you've ever seen, because that then becomes the benchmark that they improve off of. So this is kind of exactly how somebody with a business background, this meets my expectation. Come in right away, hit everything as hard as you can, right? None of this stuff, by the way, is a surprise. It's all the stuff that was talked about on the and I'm not. Listen, I'm not trying to convince anybody to like Donald Trump. So you can like him, you can hate him. We're here to invest money and make money. My point is, none of this is really a surprise. So for the media to pitch this narrative that like there's all this uncertainty and this is all very shocking news that, you know, these are the things that are happening. No, this is exactly what we were told was going to happen. Now we have to see how it plays out. The last time Trump was in office, the economy was very strong. Inflation was very low. The economy was strong. I'll show you an inflation report because that's another one of these things. People are worried about inflation. I just feel like people have lost 100% historical perspective on what inflation is. Hyperinflation, stagflation. We've seen it, and I'm going to show it to you guys because I think I have that chart up. So this is historical U.S. inflation rates from 1929, which was that was the Great Depression. That was the stock market crash until now. So you're going to see, let me just go down the list. This starts literally year by year. So it's hard to look at the 1930s. That was 100 years ago. But if I fast forward, to the 50s, I mean, you're down around less than 1% for a lot of these. Then we pop up to 3%. 1%, 1.7%. So we're going along 0, 1, 2, 3, 4%. Then all of a sudden things start to pop up a little bit. 69's bad year, 6%, 75.6%. Then we get back down into the 3.3. By the way, historically, somewhere around 3.5% is what our inflation rate is historically if you add all this up. But look at this run. This is stagflation. So you've got a couple of runs. 1973, 8.7%. 1974, 12.3% inflation. This, by the way, is the Fed fund rate. So the Fed fund rate was at 9 and 8. 1975. But you really want to get ugly? Here's where these were the Jimmy Carter years. 6.7%, 9%, 13.3%, 12.5%. The Fed had the target rate at 18% in 1980. 18%. We're freaking out that it's in the high fours. So when everyone's talking about, we're reliving the nightmare, no, we're not. And this is not the high. This is the average for the year. So even in this last go around during Biden, and this sounds like I'm being skewed politically, but I'm just showing you, these are the Biden years. These were the Trump years. 2.1% inflation, 1.9, 2.3, and 1.4. And remember, tariffs were one of the big ingredients in his equation. So, between 1.4 and 2.3% for those 4 years. Here's the Biden years: 7%, 6.5%, 3.4%, and now 2.9%. So to me, 3.4, that's just fine. 2.9, that's also just fine. We've moved into a much better place. These were very bad years, but even these very bad years were nothing like. So when you hear people, when you look at people and you see all these articles about inflation spiraling out of control and reliving the stagflation of the late 1970s, that was many, 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 many multiples worse than what's happening today. I think you're going to see this trend continue. If we stay under 3 for the next 4 years, we're fine. We're fine. 3.5s are, 100-year average. So I'm showing these because I think these numbers are important. And I don't think people really realize these numbers, because if you were to watch the media, this is not the perception that you would have. Any thoughts on that, George? Is that a tangent?
No thoughts at all. It's just, remember that when inflation goes up, your GNP goes up even when nothing happened. Good. Does that make sense?
Well, that can cause.
It's a weight. Yeah,
but does it keep up? Right.
Yeah.
So, I'm not worried about inflation. I don't think, the Fed has some cover, but I think they will be lowering interest rates more than what's built in right now. And if we look at what's built in, so we got a meeting next week, 99% chance they don't lower rates, which I agree with. I mean, it's 100% chance they don't lower rates. It's 99.9%, barring some world catastrophic event. They're not lowering rates next week. In the May meeting, there's still a 74% chance they don't lower rates. So I think that's a mistake. I think the Fed, once again, is waiting too long. This is exactly what they did in 2024. Instead of raising it in the first half of the year, doing their cuts in the first half of the year, they did their cuts in the second half of the year. They're doing the same thing again. June is the first month where people are starting to price in the first rate cut. So to me, that would be a mistake. I think the numbers that come in between now and then might accelerate this to May. Who knows? I don't know that will happen, but it looks like it's getting priced into June. But in any event, I do think we're going to get 3 or 4 rate cuts this year. And that's going to put things back where we want them and back where we need them to be. So they can delay the inevitable, but this is what's coming, in my opinion. Let's go to the Bitcoin miners and see what they did this week, this month, this year. So this is week over week. This is the close of last Friday versus the close of this Friday. So Core Scientific was up 13%. I'm just going to show there's a reason for that. Core Scientific crashed last week. So last week it was down 30%. Most of that was in one day, and it was on some big news that between Microsoft and CoreWeave, or whatever their name is, which directly affects Core Scientific. So they tanked. So they had a little recovery this week. In a week where Bitcoin was in the red and all the other Bitcoin miner stocks were in the red, Core Scientific did get back a little bit of that 30% nightmare from last week. Bitcoin down 3% Friday over Friday. And you can see 4%, 6%, 6%, Riots at 7, Huts at 7. But we have some, and this goes to who was it earlier that was talking about this? That we're getting the leverage to the downside and not to the upside. You know, Wolf, you're getting a 3x leverage to the downside. Well, CleanSpark, 3x leverage to the downside. Bitfarms, 3x leverage to the downside. Hive, 4x. Marathon, 5x. I mean, this was not a good week. And it was really Monday and Tuesday that the Bitcoin miners got wrecked. They clawed their way back all week. They actually had a pretty decent week the rest of the week. And you can see, you know, obviously today on Friday, they finished strong. You know, Marathon was up 8% on Friday. And it was down 18% on the week. That's a tough week. So this was a tough week. Last week was not a great week. So if I go year to date, this chart's a disaster. So for those of you who are sick of the Bitcoin miners, this is why. After a year of 2024, that was a disappointing year for the majority of Bitcoin miners. We'll just quickly look at that. 2024, there was only 2 Bitcoin miners that outperformed Bitcoin. Now, for the risk and volatility that you're taking investing in a Bitcoin miner, even these 2 that outperformed Bitcoin, that's not what you're hoping for. You're probably okay, good, you made a lot of money on it, but it's not what you were hoping for on a year Bitcoin was up 122%, and then BitDeer roughly the same. And then there's a big drop off. Half of these stocks were down on the year. Bitfarms was down almost 50% on the year. And I'm going to show you their performance. I think this is the most undervalued stock. The only one that gives me pause is Hive is so low that, you know, these 2 are vying for the most undervalued stocks. But you'll see, like Riot was down 34% last year. Marathon, 29% last year. Those are horrible, horrible performance in a year where Bitcoin was up 122%. That's a big bull year for Bitcoin. This year, Bitcoin's down 10%. So, okay, we're right across the board for the first, we are 2.5 months into this year. So the first 2.5 months are not good. BitDeer's down 52%. TeraWolf's down 42%. There's no great news. CleanSpark is winning at down 13% for the year. Marathon down 21%. Riot down 23%. I mean, these are the ones that are performing well, relatively speaking, but that's still a 2x leverage to the downside from Bitcoin. So can they have a turnaround story and come back? Is Bitcoin mining a failed business model? We are at almost completely split on this. So if you're at a machine where you can vote, put your vote in and we'll end this, but 52%, 51, we're at 51 to 49% right now on this. So we're at almost exactly 50% of you out there think that Bitcoin mining is a failed business model. I imagine that, you know, those of you that are investing in the Bitcoin miners are choosing the ones that are splitting their resources between high performance computing / AI and Bitcoin mining. That's a little diversity, and you know that could end up being a good play. I would contend that the Bitcoin miners that are hodling, I'm going to take a look at those right now. So we now have all the February results. So over the weekend, I'll put this together for February. But as of January, Marathon had 45,000 Bitcoin. Riot, that's the second most of any publicly traded company in the world. We all know Strategy, or AKA MicroStrategy, has the most Bitcoin. They're around 500,000 Bitcoin. Riot has 18,000 Bitcoin. That's the third most out of any company in the world. CleanSpark, over 10,000. They're now over 11,000. HUT is over 10,000. These 4 companies in particular have a large stack of Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin runs up to 150 or 175 or 200,000, then, you know, they're going to get, this is ordinary income. The increase in price is now counted by generally accepted accounting principles as ordinary income. So they're going to get monstrous gains if Bitcoin can continue to rally for the rest of 2025. Now, if Bitcoin's topped and it's all down from here, then the hodling is not going to be a good thing. But I think, you know, those of you who are here and who are invested, I think we believe that Bitcoin has not hit its high yet. So that'll be our next poll. What you guys think of that? All right, we're at 84 likes.
We're getting there, Tom.
We're slowly but surely. If you guys could smash the like button, it's a big help to the channel. That's all that we ask. So if you could be so kind.
Should we change our channel and start talking about AI?
Yeah, it's like, I know AI is the hot topic. It's a real conundrum, because I know a lot of people have been here with us for a long time, and anytime we stray a little bit off topic from the Bitcoin miners, there's a certain amount of people that are kind of mad about it. So, we talk about the market itself and the major factors that are influencing the market. You have to, but we don't really talk about a lot of other segments of the market. So maybe we'll put a poll up and see if you guys want us to start expanding what we talk about. The reason I'm pounding the table on this is I just don't think we've had our run yet. And I feel like people keep dropping out and keep dropping out and keep dropping out. And I'm not criticizing those people. I don't blame those people. And maybe in the end, they're going to be right. But if these guys have their run, and I'm going to just show you what I'm talking about by a run. So I'm going to go to a stock that's down and out right now. Bitfarms. If you look at Bitfarms on the 1-day time frame, look at this period of depression. It would have been very easy for these many months to say, I give up. But if you did that, when it bottomed out here on November 24th, 2023, in the next month, in 1 month, it ran up almost 250%. So this is what I mean, and this is why I hold. Because if you miss these tiny periods, most of the upward movement is in tiny periods, right? You had to go through all of this downward action, all of this relentless sideways action. This is very hard. I dollar cost averaged in like crazy on Bitfarms and Cleanspark in particular, and Cleanspark's chart looks very similar. So by getting my dollar cost average down, even now I'm still green in my Bitfarms, even at $1.11, which is insane considering a year ago it was at almost $4. And by the way, that's nowhere near its high from the previous run. If we zoom out, Bitcoin got to $9.36 in the previous cycle. Now, I'm not saying they're going to get back there, but even a company like Bitfarms, this is down 88% from the highs of the previous cycle. So it's down 88% from the highs of the previous cycle, but let's forget that and give a more realistic price target that I do think we'll get to. It's down from 1 year ago, February 26, 2024, it's down 72%. So they're twice as big. They've more than doubled their exahash. So their exahash is up over 100%. If I go to the chart, this is what everybody did in February right here. You're going to see Bitfarms. This is the number of Bitcoin mined. Bitfarms mined 213 Bitcoin in February. That is only 2 less than Core Scientific. They will probably pass Core Scientific in the next couple of months, and then they'll be ahead of them from that point forward, because Core is not growing that side of their business. They have a huge AI portion of their business, so I understand that. You'll note, here's the change month over month from January to February. There is one company that mined more Bitcoin in February than January. That is Bitfarms. So they were the best performing company. Out of all of these companies, 2 exahash was the total amount added in February, and almost 1 of that came from Bitfarms. So by every measure that I can do, Bitfarms operationally is performing very well. They've fallen short of what they said their goals were. A lot of that has to do with how the stock has been suppressed. And, they just could not raise the kind of capital to get to where they wanted to go. And they didn't want, you don't want to raise money at $1.20 or 30 or $1.40 when this stock was close to $4 within the last 12 months. But if you look at, so that's where this is how I look for opportunities. And you're not going to be right 100% of the time, but look at a company that's performing very well, but the stock is performing very poorly, right? This stock is an F. It's an F. There's no other rating you can give this stock over the last 18 months. It's a solid F. Yet, they're one of the top performers out of the Bitcoin miners. And I'm not saying this is the only good stock to pick, and I'm not recommending this stock. Obviously, none of this is financial advice, and you guys gotta, because if you don't have conviction in a stock like Bitfarms, you're gonna lose money. You're gonna buy it. It's bad things are gonna happen to it, and you're gonna get out. Because look at how patient you've had to be at this point. And you may say, well, guess what? Your patience is never gonna pay off. Maybe this just keeps going down forever. I find that very hard to believe. Again, they were the fifth best in growth in 2024. They 97% growth in their exahash, so almost doubled their exahash. Only 4 companies did better than that. So their efficiency, everything. There's take a look at. I did a CleanSpark video. You can take a look at it if you want to see more. Having said all of that, it was up 1.8% today. It was one of the laggers on the day. And, if we go back to how these stocks are performing year to date, Bitfarms is down 26%. And keep in mind, it was down 49% in 2024. So from down basically 50%, it's down another 26%. So this is what I say. Over the last 18 months, this stock is an F. Is this company an F? They've had a lot of controversy. I could go through the list of reasons why you could criticize them, but
why you could give them an F?
But are you going to give them an F when they were the only company out of all the publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies to mine more in February than they did in January? Right? They have grown. This was a company that, they're now at 16 exahash. One of the bigger Bitcoin miners. No, they're never going to break into this top 4. That opportunity is now gone. But if they can remain in this 5, 6, 7 spot, I think that's a company that's going to certainly at least have its run this time around. The other thing I'll tell you is people are terrified of stock dilution. Bitfarms has basically told everybody we're not going to go. They're initially a year ago their plan was to get to 35 exahash by the end of 2025. They're now saying, nope, we're not going to do that. We're going to grow. They were at 12 exahash. They're going to grow to 21 exahash. They have no plans to grow beyond that. And my point is, they're going to do a lot less stock dilution. And if you look at something, I keep track of this number. In September, these Bitcoin miners added 15 exahash just in the month of September 2024. Just under 8 exahash in October, almost 21 exahash in November, 18 exahash in December, and then you're going to see a big drop off. Now all of a sudden it's 2025. 5.3 exahash added by all of these put together in January, 2.0 exahash, 1/10 what they did in November. So they've decreased this by 90%. Now, a lot of these companies have growth plans, but my point is a lot of the companies that did these gigantic stock dilutions, it was all of this exahash that they added here. You'll see, these are monstrous numbers. So these companies got a lot bigger. Bitfarms came into the year, at 6 exahash in 2024 and went out at around 12. So, that's basically a double. And now they're at 16. So, and they're looking to get to 21. I think they'll end up getting past that. I've gone on about Bitfarms. I've just said my piece. What you guys
I think Bitfarms might be number 1 for the year, by the way.
By the end of this year?
Yep. I'm going to call Bitfarms number 1.
I feel
return.
I think there's a really good chance of that. I think there's, they're just based on company performance versus stock performance. There's such a disparity. I think they have a lot of room to grow.
I'm going to go with there'd be the top 20 in stock market this year.
Top 20 growth of all stocks.
Yes.
They could have, if Bitcoin does its thing, right? Everybody's been lulled into, we're in the middle of a big pullback, right? We're many months into going sideways. This is a 30% pullback in total. This is where we're in fear. We were in extreme fear. These are the times I am waiting, because I dollar cost average. None of these stocks have reached the low that I dollar cost averaged in the last time I bought. I think they're going to beat that low one more time, and that will be what I think and hope. And I've thought this before. I think that'll be my last dollar cost average in. If I get one more shot at buying these at a lower low, I will do so. If not, I'm done, and I'm fine with that, because I intended to be done. I've made multiple purchases since I intended to be done. It's just these stocks have gotten so low, I felt the need to dollar cost average in. And if they get there again, I'll do it one more time. So I'm not buying this dip, but that's indicative. Like, I'm very bullish on these, and I'm not buying. So the buying pressure has disappeared for the short term. But when FOMO kicks in, and it's certainly not when Bitcoin's down 30% and we're in fear or extreme fear, there's going to be the other side of this. And then we're going to get our runs. Just like we looked at. I mean, Bitfarms didn't do this just once. If you did this a few months later from this low to this high, that's another double. That's 100% run in, a month. Then they did it again. That's 114% run in a month. A month and 1 month and 1 week. So this is what I'm saying. Like, if you get out at the wrong time, if you sell at the bottom, you're likely to miss. This would be, just in the last year and a half, 1, 2, 3 times you would have missed more than a double in the stock if you got out. So, if this runs up 100% and you say, you know what, I'm sick of it, I'm getting out, there's going to be a lot of people that probably do that. So, right, this has got to get up to, obviously, $2, it's at $1.11, so it's got to get up to $2.22. If this gets up to $2.22, which, by the way, I have a line at $2.16. This was support. It turned into resistance. So I think there's every chance, right? We've already seen support here turn into resistance here. And can we run back up and turn this back into support? Well, that would be a double right there. And if that's all you want and you get out then, so be it. I think it's going to go even higher than that, but that remains to be seen. Only the future knows the answer to that question. All right, another simple poll. Do you think Bitfarms will 2x or more in 2025? Yes or no? And we are at 96 likes. I'd like to thank everybody that has smashed the like button. We are almost there. If we get a few more likes, we can get to our 100 likes. See a lot of people saying Bitfarms. I got Bitfarms is a loser. George must be high. We'll see what the poll says. And unmodded Jeff is saying, who thinks Riot won't get Bitfarms? So that sits out there. Now they've come to an agreement for the time being, and it's not really on the front burner. We'll do this poll quickly, and then we'll see if there's still people that think maybe Riot's going to end up buying Bitfarms. As a Bitfarms shareholder, I don't think that's in their best interest, and I do think they're going to rally from here. It would be, they're down over 50% from the offer that Riot made. So whereas I think that $2.30 offer was ridiculous, so if I thought $2.30 was ridiculous, guess what I think of $1.11? But here we sit at $1.11. So that's reality. Oh, all right. So in miscellaneous news, here's a little trend that started. Mara has filed with the SEC that they are changing their independent auditors. And they are going to PricewaterhouseCoopers. So they are going to a Big Four company. They announced this on March 10th. That is my old stomping grounds, by the way. I'm a former PricewaterhouseCooper a lifetime ago. But I do think it's significant that you're seeing some of these big miners move to the Big Four accounting firms, because so that was on March 10th. 3 days later, on March 13th, here's Core Scientific saying they're switching auditors. They're going over to KPMG, another Big Four accounting firm. So I think this is a trend. I think you're going to see the ones that survive long-term, the bigger companies. And Core Scientific, at the end of the day, it may end up that Bitcoin is the smallest part of what Core Scientific does, because they have leaned heavily into the data center part of what they're doing. They've allocated 2/3 of their electrical resources to the high performance computing /AI versus the Bitcoin mining. I don't think they're going to give up on Bitcoin mining, but I think,
Tom, did you hear about bringing these power plants back online?
No.
You didn't hear about that?
What's the deal?
Interesting. What's the deal?
What's the deal?
What's the deal? Who are these people? They're talking about bringing all the what are they, nuclear power plants back online.
Gotcha. Yeah, that would be, listen, that's very affordable energy. So the combination of more energy, we know the U.S. is looking to produce more energy. This should result in more competitive energy pricing. In addition to that, these miners are getting more and more and more efficient, which leads me to BitDeer completes. So this press release came out March 9th. BitDeer completes testing of its latest Seal 3 Bitcoin miner.
Oh my.
So the one I'm really looking at, and I think there's an article about it here. So they did the Seal 1, the Seal 2, the Seal 3, the Seal 4. Those are all coming out within 24 months of each other. Even really, either 2, 3, and 4 are coming out within 12 months of each other. So I don't know why you would even buy a Seal 3 at 9.7 joules per terahash if you could buy a Seal 4 at 5 or 6. Because you'll see how BitDeer is transforming Bitcoin mining machines. The firm is producing a brand new chip designed with its Seal Miner A4, which is expected to have 5 joules per terahash in power efficiency. So I've been scratching my head on exactly how they're going to do this. And I just want to show you one sentence. And I mean, I'll be honest, I don't even know what this means. But if this technology is out there, this could be a game changer for all chips everywhere. Let me find. So you'll see over time, they talk about the first ever ASIC Canaan Avalon in 2013 was 6,000 joules per terahash. The Antminer S21 XP Hydro is 12 joules per terahash. So we've already gone from 6,000 down to 12. So the amount of efficiency that the Bitcoin miners are achieving is just mind-boggling. But to go from and the entire global network is at a much higher number than this, right? The really, really, really good companies are between 15 and 20 joules per terahash as a company. Most are more towards 30 joules per terahash still.
Tom, I got to interrupt. I got to run.
Okay.
I'll see you guys. It's
All right.
Spring break for my daughter. We're going out to dinner. I'll see you guys.
All right, George, have a great weekend. Thank you.
See you guys. School's out for the summer.
So I'll just let me get to the part where they talk about it. Instead of just using a charge once and discharging it, we use it several times, 4, 5, and 6 times. So we get 75 to 80% improvement in efficiency by doing that. Our SealMiner A4 chip will use this technology, but it should also be applicable more generally in digital chips, especially digital chips that are highly active like GPUs and signal processing chips. So I don't understand how they're doing this. I'm sure somebody out there understands this a lot better than I do, but they're basically saying out of one charge, they're getting 4 or 5 or 6 charges. So obviously that's increasing if they're able to recycle, if you will, the energy. People have known for a long time that you could recycle the electric charge on a chip, but no one's really been able to figure out how to do that in a way that allows for high performance. We've cracked the code. So this is a very big promise from BitDeer. If BitDeer is successful at this, this could be, this could be the stock to beat right here, because they're talking about making a gigantic, gigantic leap. And of course, who do you think is going to get these first? While everyone else is at 15 or 20 joules per terahash, if they can really get to a chip that's 5 or even 6 or 6.5 joules per terahash, right? Their cost per coin is going to be very low, and they should be minting money. So we'll see. It remains to be seen. That technology is still in the research and development phase, but they say they're going to get it out by the end of the year this year. So this is potential big news waiting. I'm going to end this poll at 50-50. Do you think Bitfarms is going to 2x? We've had multiple 50-50 polls. That's 2 in a row. Is Bitcoin a failed business model? 50-50. So I think you can see this corresponds with, we've got fear and greed. In fear, we just moved out of extreme fear a few days ago. We did get as low. If I go down to, you'll see we got down to 10 2 weeks ago on the fear. That is extreme fear. We got down to 10. Yes, we've gotten to lower than that at the bottom of a crypto winter. But 10, this is one of the 10 worst days in the history of the Fear and Greed Index, which is only about 5 or 6 years old. We got down to 15 in March. We got down to 20 on March 10th. So, those are all extreme fear numbers. So we've bounced from extreme fear. I think we're bottoming out. I'll leave you with these thoughts. I think that we're going through a bottoming out process. We had a really green day today, but it was still a red week. And there's just still a lot of pain inside of the Bitcoin miners and inside of Bitcoin. I mean, we're way off of our highs. Even now with a big day today, we're 23% off of our all-time high that we hit in late January. So, we're almost 2 months down the road. We're still down 23%. 4 days ago, we hit that almost exactly hit that 30% pullback. So was that the bottom? We will see. Let's see what it does over the weekend. But in the meantime, at least we get to go out on a win with a green Friday. So with that, I will say thank you to everybody for joining the stream. If you're interested in Bitcoin and you're still hanging in there with the Bitcoin miners and you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing to the channel, smashing the like button. And for members, we will see you Tuesday after the market closes. And we are here for everybody every Friday after the market closes. So have a fantastic weekend, everybody. Thanks so much. And as always,